feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the DaneMoore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks. Coming at you Monday afternoon. It's December 15th. After the Wolves beat the Sacramento Kings on Sunday night, they are now 7-1 since Thanksgiving. And the one loss is that game that got away late against the Phoenix Suns a week ago last Monday. Due to the in-season tournament going on last week, they did not play any games from Monday until this weekend. And if you had holiday parties going on this weekend or maybe watching the Vikings game last night, on today's show, we will run through the Wolves' 2 wins over the weekend, again, against the Warriors and the Kings. 2 games the Wolves played without Anthony Edwards and without Mike Conley. Kind of as we talked about all season, right? The Wolves were going to need to catch some injuries for guys like Rob Dillingham, Terrence Shannon Jr., and Jalen Clark to all get substantive roles at the same time. And that did happen this weekend without Edwards and without Conley. Shannon played 30 minutes on Friday night against Golden State and then played 13 minutes last night against Sacramento. Prior to those 2 games, Shannon's 4 previous games had been 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 9 minutes, and 8 minutes played. Dillingham also played 17 minutes against the Warriors and 12 minutes against the Kings. That was the first time Dillingham had played more than 8 minutes and 37 seconds in a game since Thanksgiving. And in bigger roles, Shannon and Dillingham looked more comfortable and were more impactful than they have been in most of their other games, especially Shannon on Friday against the Warriors. That 30-minute night was definitely the best he's looked all season. It was a little Nikhil Alexander-Walker-y, I thought. But anyways, the bigger roles, better production, better high tests. So I asked Finch after the game about sort of the theory of giving these younger guys more minutes and getting better returns from him. We'll start with that. Here's what Finch had to say. Rob, now that it's set with Ant out, it's 9-man rotation, so there's just like a couple more minutes available for those guys. Do you see that consistency of getting a second shift or being able to play 10 minutes for them making them more impactful or comfortable?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question. So there's a lot of things. Right now, TJ played 30 minutes the other night in San Francisco, okay? And he earned all 30 minutes. And, much has been said about the 10-minute roles that these guys have. And with the way that we're constructed, we don't have anyone who near the top of the league in minutes led. We have a deep 6-7 guys who can all play upwards of the high 20s or in low 30s or mid 30s, and sometimes it just doesn't leave like this 20-minute role for these guys, and we've been playing 10, and what if the role is only 10 minutes? I mean, shouldn't you go out and crush those 10 minutes and then be ready to go back if we need you more, or maybe we run with you a little bit longer, but not everyone's going to play their best basketball every night, but the reality is, like, that's the role right now, and they gotta nail it. And we expect that there's going to be good days and bad days because they're second-year players, and that's what second-year players do. They have inconsistencies. If you play 3 games, you hope that you get 1 good, 1 not so good, and 1 maybe stinker, and you got to turn that into 2 positives and maybe 1 negative. And once we get there, then things start to go.
I take that to be pretty clear about how this is going to work going forward. The role is 10 minutes, and without better or more consistent play from Shannon and Dillingham in those smaller roles, more opportunity is not going to be gifted to them. I will discuss this more in the episode with Jace once we bring him in, because this wasn't the only playing time shift that took place over the weekend. Bones Highland season is here, but I wanted to make sure to get that longer clip in there from Finch, because I do think, again, it's pretty defining and should sort of be the premise we operate under when thinking about the young guys going forward this season. But let's get Jason here. We'll talk about it more. But first, we'll take a quick break to let you know that this show is brought to you by Prize Picks. And if you got eliminated from your season-long fantasy football league like I did this weekend, Prize Picks is a way to continue playing daily fantasy football for the rest of the NFL regular season and the playoffs. Fun in the playoffs. I really like it there. All you need to do to win at Prize Picks is put 2 or more picks in your lineup to win. Like tonight, it's Steelers, Dolphins. Will Aaron Rodgers have more or less than 211.5 passing yards? Or will Devon Achane have more or less than 0.5 touchdowns? I always think that touchdown ones are fun. It's like make a $5 lineup, touchdowns more or less than on a couple of guys. It's easy, fun thing to do. I will be filling my fantasy football void in my life with Prize Picks this December, and you can too. If you don't yet have a Prize Picks account, all you have to do is put in the promo code Dane when you sign up, and you'll receive $50 in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. That's prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app using promo code Dane when you first create your account. Coming up next on the show, it's Jace Frederick. Let's go. All right, we are now joined by Wolves beat writer Jace Frederick from the St. Paul Pioneer Press. And Jace, I just talked in the open about Terrence Shannon Jr. and Rob Dillingham getting different roles over the weekend with Anthony Edwards and Mike Conley missing those 2 games. I do want you to mix in some thoughts on Finch's comments after the game on that. But the biggest change to the Wolves rotation and probably the biggest impact on, I don't know, how they played over the weekend was Bones Hyland. When you and I recorded just last Monday, Hyland was completely out of the rotation, hadn't played more than 10 minutes in a game since October 27th when he was playing in the first couple of games of the season. But he appears to firmly be back in the rotation now, even once Conley and Edwards do return. Over the last 3 games, he has played. He played in that Phoenix game last Monday. He did not start that game. That was Ant played. He was given Rob Dillingham's role for that game. Rob did not play. And Bones had 14 points off the bench in that game. He even closed the game for the Wolves there. And then against Golden State, Ant and Conley are out. Bones gets the start, but 5 minutes into the game, he knocks knees with somebody or something and is out with a bone bruise for the rest of the game. But I thought it was noteworthy that he was the one who was chosen to start. Then last night against Sacramento, he starts again and had 18 points, 5 of 6 from 2, 1 of 4 from 3. What have you made of this, or what have you seen from Hyland specifically in these last 3 games since he rejoined the rotation, from kind of him as a player individually, but also kind of what it means for this team a little bit more, I guess, globally?
I think from Bones, just like Bones seems to know who he is as a player and how that fits in with the team. Like, I think that Bones looks very comfortable, confident, natural, basically every time he goes out there, even when it's been like spot minutes. I feel like Bones plays like Bones, but not in a way that's ever like hijacking possessions or anything like that. It's like when the opportunity presents itself, he's aggressive. When he's out in transition, the shot's there, he takes it. Like, and that I think is like a big part of playing within a rhythm and a flow of an offense anyway, is like nobody second guessing themselves. But also kind of like making the right play within that. I think Bones has done a really good job of that. Like, he's playing with pace. He knows that's what the team needs. Like, he's kind of creating off the bounce, but doing so in a pretty quick decision manner. Like, he knows what the team needs in that sense. Like, he's a pretty good pick and roll guy, pick and pop player. I think he's done a really nice job of, like being him, but like, it's not the Bones Hyland show when he's out there. Like, he's being him within like an offense, while still like everybody else touching the ball, everything like that. I think he's just been really good. And I think a big part of that is like comfort with who he is as a player, confidence, but also just having like a real mature approach to all of it, which I think he's had frankly all season, from the spot minutes to not being in the rotation to getting another opportunity and being ready for it. Like, I think he's just in a really good spot in his career now. And it's cool to see kind of this being who he's become. Cause like let's not play around. Like, there was a reason why he, fell out of favor in Denver and didn't play with the Clippers and whatnot. And he's talked about that, like the maturing he's done. And that's been on full display, I think, for us since he got here, really. And he just looks like a more mature version of the skilled player that he's always been. And I think that's really been cool to see.
I would say the last 2 games have been as good as the Wolves' ball movement and pace has been all season for like a 2-game pocket. There's been other good ones kind of sporadically mixed in. It would be inaccurate to attribute all of that to Bones Hyland, because probably the best ball movement game of the season was that Golden State game, and Bones was out after 5 minutes. There's also no Anthony Edwards and no Mike Conley, who are kind of actually your main initiators or ball movers, in addition to Julius Randle. But I just thought it was interesting over the course of the weekend how good that looked. I thought the Warriors game was excellent in that way, especially interior passing was awesome. I think for people who watch that game, if you watch kind of crunch time of that, especially Jaden finding Rudy and them finding cutters, through the middle of the kind of the teeth of the Warriors defense, though it doesn't have much teeth, to be fair. That Warriors defense, holy cow, that the team is just, that game was crazy. And the Wolves, it felt like you're like a lower level game where one team is just so much bigger and so much more athletic. Like the team that's hit puberty and the team that hasn't did like teenage whatever. The Wolves were dominant in that way, but it wasn't just physically dominating them. They're passing the ball well, playing smart, and won that game. And some people might point to, okay, Ant wasn't out in that game, or might point to Bones was in. And this was the reason for that, or that was the reason for that. I don't think we have enough like anecdotal evidence to point to it being one thing or the other, or certainly not enough to be like, well, Bones started both of those games. That's the reason. That doesn't line up. But we've seen that, right? I mean, we saw, I'm assuming I haven't talked to you over the weekend, but that really impressed me from especially the Golden State game. How much staying power do you think that has? And does Bones's presence, you think, assist in that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, like, I don't know how much I attribute of that to Bones. I think he's done a really nice job like slotting into it. But like you said, like I don't think like this first 4.5 minutes was like, yeah, Bones is gone now, but he already set the tone and it's all been just put in place. Like you did it, Bones. Like, thank you for your service, like for setting the table here. I just think there's a lot of guys who prefer to play that way on this team. And I think that they play their best basketball when they play that way on this team. I thought it was really interesting last night. I want to talk more about the Warriors game too, but like last night after the game, Nas on like his post-game TV interview or whatever, Marnie asked him about how like the balanced attack and that making up for how they score when Ant's not out there. And he goes, I think we could do that when Ant is out there too. Like we have a lot of talented players on this team who can score. Like we have just talent across the board. I think they all feel that way, and they all feel like, hey, if I'm involved in this, I can contribute to this at this pretty high of a level. But I think so much of it comes down to playing with enough pace to do that. Obviously the movement that kind of involves all five guys on the court, just kind of keeping defenses off their heels, and like an off heels out of like a little bit of scattered defense. Like all of these guys really are good enough to score against that. It's just getting to that. So I don't know. Like, I don't know how frequently they can do this moving forward, because it has been two really good games. I think it's been cool to see like really high assist and ball movement numbers in games where they didn't shoot the ball that well, because usually that often is kind of a thing of like, well, we're not hitting these, and then just kind of turns into a little bit more of like a stagnant offense. It didn't do that. Frankly, against Golden State, they didn't hit outside shots, but they just kept finding different ways to pick at their advantage on the interior. Again and again, even when outside shots weren't falling, it's like, well, this works though, and finding different ways to get to it again and again and again. So I just think they played really smart basketball, and that's like something that I think ideally can stick. But we do see this with all teams, frankly, too, of like you kind of get in and out of things. I'm certainly not like their identity now. It's not like this is what the Wolves do. But it's a couple of good games of sample, and I think the Bones thing, I don't know how much he sparked it, but I definitely think he's been a part of it and played into it, and that's been cool to see too. And that does give you a thing of like, okay, yeah, like what this team wants to become, like Bones can fit into that, while also adding some of the things that even within it, with the creation and a little bit of extra shooting and just pace, like that they needed help with. He's playing what they want. Yeah, pace is the biggest thing, because pace, we talk about pace all the time, and so much of it is like, wow, Jaden's really good in transition, and TJ's really good in transition, and heck, Nas is good in transition, Julius is good in transition.
But who starts it?
Exactly. The first couple, like especially Jaden and TJ, those are hit aheads, and that's great. But the easiest way to guarantee transition again and again and again is the guy who gets the ball pushing it, like, and the guy like the main handler pushing it. Like that's how like a Halliburton really stirs the drink for like a Indiana. Like,
I don't think that's just an Ant thing though. I think that's Julius too.
Yeah, no,
like,
I agree.
Both
I agree.
of them grab. Yeah. I didn't know if you were
not
going
as.
with,
No. I'm saying like, and Mike doesn't even. Mike's not a pushing and transition guy, and he's often sometimes a guy who brings the ball up too. Like, So I think it is just like one guy who the more of a guard. I think it has to be more of a handler who's just like, no, this is what I do. And everybody's kind of filling lanes around it. I think that's huge. Like I said, like Mike doesn't do that much and doesn't do that much. Julius is very sporadic with it. Bones, if he can be somebody who's like committed to it, I think that's a huge boost for Minnesota.
Bones was asked after the game about putting pace into the game for a team who generally plays slower. I thought it was a good answer and kind of funny too.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's hard. It's just, the more you do it, the more they run. I'm pretty sure everyone wants the ball. Everyone wants to, get out and get some dunks, get some threes. So I keep pushing the break. I got the ball. They got to run. So let's run. So I mean, as long as you keep pushing the pace and find others, and whether it's creating for myself too, it's just the beauty of the game.
Yeah, no, that's natural for him, right? And I think what we're talking about with whether it's Julius or Mike or Ant, it hasn't been natural, like in their play. I think it's all things that they have the skill set to do more of. I do think Julius could grab more defensive rebounds and go like Giannis. I think Julius is talented enough, has the skill set for that more. I think Mike, despite being older, and we say like, Mike has lost a step or whatever. That's more like lateral and like burst, like straight. Mike is fast. If you watch Mike just run like straight line, Mike is still fast in that sort of way. He grew up in the 2009 whatever NBA, and that's not what point guards do. So he's fighting against that there. And then I think Ant fights between some combination of fatigue and also just a natural inclination to catch and assess like statically where he is, rather than kind of catching and going with his head up, and Ant is so fast that even half speed there, right, while kind of assessing the lay of the land immediately upon catching it would inject some pace in there. So I do think, to the Bones point, we saw what that does when a player consistently is looking to have that extra spark of a step of pace, and it is just going to lead to more efficient offense, right? We know transition possessions generate like 120% of the points per possession than a half court possession does, right? But I also think it leads to distribution. I think like playing with pace leads to a more egalitarian sort of like, well, we're just trying to find like a gap here. We're just trying to find like the most open dude in this semi-transition situation. And the biggest reason that 5 players scored 17 points against the Warriors in that game, and why 5 players, I think, scored 18 or more points last night against the Kings, was that Ant was out, right? You don't have your 30-a-night guy. They don't really, other than Julius, have that. But I think part of it is you get Jaden 6 more easy ones in a game. You get Nas a couple of transition ones, Stante ones like that. And you get a little bit more of this natural spreading of the wealth that I think would be a good thing to just sort of sink in. So when your team does get a little bit more Ant-centric in the half court and the possessions that you have to do that, or when it's the lineup combinations where there's not a lot of offense out there and Ant does kind of need to bail some of those groups out, then it doesn't feel as like sludgy. I don't think it would feel as sludgy if you do have that consistent intention for pace. And to be fair to the team and to Finch, like they have been pushing that throughout the season. I just think with Bones in the lineup, we're seeing like, oh, that's what that does. That's what that does if the guy is consistently looking to spark, ignite the break, as they say.
I hear you with Bones, but he really didn't play against the Warriors. So I guess like he's there for half of it. So what do you think sparked it against Golden State?
God, no, now that's 4 days ago since I watched that game. I think what I would say it is kind of to extend my thing here is the idea that they were playing more egalitarian, right? And when they aren't looking to just play through one guy, then I think you naturally play faster. Like I'm not sure there's a chicken and egg work there. Like I think both of those things can be true. If you're not looking to just play through one player, I think you naturally play faster and just looking for that. But in my head right now, like I can't tell you about what happened in the second quarter there. I thought in the second half when they started playing great, they did the thing that they do even when Ant's out there, where it's the avalanche, right? Like, here we go, we got it, and they went on that 17-0 run, 20-5 run in the fourth quarter. What do you think? I don't remember enough.
I think I agree with what you said to start about when there's not someone out there that you kind of feel like a natural deference to. You do play more aggressive, and that is often quicker because you're not guessing like, is this my chance to go here? Like, I see that with Jaden. I see that with Nas, especially. Like, those two guys look like they feel as though they're the best players on the court out there when Ant isn't out there. And so, like, it's like ball gets swings to me, I'm confident putting it on the deck right away or whatever. If I feel like it's swung to me and I have an advantage and I notice an advantage, like I see a lot more of that, like guys just being very quick and aggressive with it. And maybe it is because also they're in more rhythm because they're touching it more. I think that also probably matters too. Like, you're more confident when you're actually in the rhythm of the game. So I think that plays into it as well. And I think just the interesting dynamic with this team is that it is very obvious to me that this is how they all want to play. Like, what they've done these last two games is their preference for how this team would play basketball. And they would prefer that Ant comes in and they don't shift that. But as we've seen time and time again, and like you said, there are certainly moments where Ant kind of has to take over games, but they would prefer those, I think, be a lot fewer and farther between because it's not just shooting. It's like if you're kind of really dribbling a lot of the clock, stuff like that. And then if you're off the ball, like, you also kind of have to move and whatnot too. So that's the interesting dynamic that I think we're going to see, that we've seen already this year, of like when he's out and comes back in, and like they can win games both ways. It's not like they're not like a bad team in either situation. It's become, I think, pretty clear to me just watching them that they want to play this way. And how can they do that? How effectively can they manage to do that? And maybe just look a little bit more egalitarian when Ant's out there. Like, yeah, hey, Julius scored 27. Can Ant be the guy scoring 27? And then Julius drops down 24, and then three other guys are scoring 15. Like, is that doable? It feels pretty doable. That I guess it remains to be seen. But I think that's kind of what they would prefer. I think that's what Finch would prefer. So that, I think, is their biggest challenge. Of like, I think that they've been good offensively all year anyway. The numbers show that. But I think that they just play with the most joy and see the most effort on both ends of the court and everything, and just look like they're having more fun out there, which I think is, like, again, how you're going to be less bored and deliver clunkers in that sense when you play that way. So I'm intrigued to see, if Ant comes back Wednesday or whenever, if they're able to kind of still have a little bit more of that where the ball's moving and everybody is decidedly more aggressive when they get the ball.
What did you think of how I don't think last night's game was clutch time, but the last two games were relatively close at the end of games. The Warriors game for sure was. It started with turnovers and then ended really well. What did you make of how they handled clutch time, again, without Ant and with the group that they did have?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that kind of comes down to some shot making sometimes. Like, they had some bad turnovers against Golden State. Yes, Dante was held and they got changed to a foul, but like that again is one where you're like, ideally you're not losing the ball there. But that was going to go down as a collapse unless Dante hits that step in three off the pick and roll there. And it was a good decision. Like, I stand by it. Like Butler was almost playing like a form of drop there. And if Dante doesn't shoot that, then the whole possession's toast because they're taking away everything else. But it comes down to, like, does Dante hit a step in three? Because if he misses that, it's like, they're probably going to lose the game. And it's like, look at this collapse. And instead he makes it and it kind of just like steadies the boat. And they're able to get back in it. But so often it does come down to like, and that was a good shot and the right shot in that spot. And so maybe that's kind of why it goes down or whatever. But it's like, you do need somebody to make a play sometimes, like just for execution to look like execution. And I think that steadied them and they played just better, smarter basketball from there because it was kind of going off the rails. And there are certainly even times where I think it maybe looks like it's going off the rails and it's like, well, they haven't hit a shot. And and that can kind of play a big determining factor in it. Like, I liked the way they got to Nas's three, but if I remember right, it was like Nas with what I thought was a decent look at like a catch and shoot three. And then he like pumps and then did a side dribble and then fires it. And that he likes that shot. It's like, great. But if that doesn't go, that's when you really start to like tense up. And especially if it doesn't go and it's a long rebound and then the Kings go score in transition, that's where you go, oh, are they falling apart? But instead it goes down. And now the Kings have to dribble the ball slowly up the court. Dante picks a pocket, gets it to 11, the game's over. That's just kind of what I think we see on a night-to-night basis of like, does like that one key turning point shot go in or not? And that can kind of make a big difference as to whether something's a one-possession game later if you're up double digits.
Yeah, no, you're for sure right there. I would just say, like, in general, like, shout out to Dante in clutch time in that Warriors game. Like, you and I have done a lot of pods the day after the Wolves have had a meltdown in clutch time. And I would think in just about every one of those, we've pointed to a Dante turnover, initiating himself. And he kind of has felt like, I think, there's been a lot of times where he's been picked in the open court, clutch time or not, this season. And that overall, for me, and I think for everybody, has kind of this like depressing factor on what Dante DiVincenzo just has been this year. Because those just seem hotter. And they are. It's more, that time is more important at the end of the game than it is the rest of the time. But it does overshadow the fact that Dante still leads the team in net rating, right? Was that?
It was true before yesterday's game, and then he was way ahead, and he was like a plus 15 last night. Yeah, he's been great.
Yeah,
I think I looked it up. He's been a plus in like 18 of the last 22 games or something like that. Or at least not a negative or something like that.
And again, and I'm not saying like let's remove the turnovers that he's had in those situations, and that's part of something that this team, limited with handlers, needs Dante, to be better at. But that's in the pot, as is all of his other minutes, as is kind of being the main reason that they won that Warriors game late, along with Julius Randle, who found Dante, I thought, on a great pass, a great read as they tried to double him in the pick and roll. A quick one
too, a very
super
quick decision. Yeah.
And we've been on Julius in late game situations too of turnovers and stuff they had. So I think that was leaving that game was probably as good as I've felt about this Wolves team like all season, just given that it was as much as you can when Anthony Edwards isn't out there and he's your whole team, right? But just in so many of the areas where guys like Dante or Julius have come up short in that time, or the ball movement has dried up, I thought they did so many of those things late in that game, and to Randle and DiVincenzo in particular, who have struggled in those times, earlier in clutch time games this season.
I thought it was interesting.
Go ahead.
Dante hits that step in three at the pick and roll to tie it when they're down 3, and it looks like the world's falling apart. And then they come back down the court. I know what he's thinking here. Like, Steph's hitting a bunch of shots on us, so we have to press up. But he presses up into a foul, and I'm like, all right, you kind of just handed him 2 points here off of
right.
A little bit that's like over aggressive. That's like Finch hates Jalen Clark fouls. And Dante went and did it, and Steph somehow missed a free throw, and I think that was kind of important, even just being down 1 instead of 2. But it was like, that was great. That wasn't, so it's still just those things of like, yes, composure, but like that's another like mental mistake. So they still provide themselves many opportunities to clean up, and nobody's perfect, in clutch time and whatnot. Like in basketball in general, it's a high possessions game. It's going to be a lot of mistakes made along the way. But I thought that was a little bit of like sometimes the out of controlness. Dante contributes to some of that. And that's can be ball handling or whatnot. And it can be like a little bit of the gambling, and frankly, like playing too tight is a little bit of a gamble there. And it went against them, but they didn't have to pay the ultimate price. But it's just kind of a little bit of like a window into Minnesota clutch time, like great shot making. Ooh, some bad decisions. Like that's kind of been who they've been at the ends of games.
Today's show is brought to you by Skims. Skims obviously has an expansive lineup in the women's clothing space, but they've really expanded their product to the men's side of things, specifically men's underwear. And I've said this before, but my favorite thing about Skims is that it is a type of boxer brief that both works for going to the gym and also just works for everyday life. I have the stretch 5-inch boxer briefs, and they work functionally just kind of like compression shorts I would wear back in the day when I played basketball, or for when I go on runs. But these ones are significantly more comfortable. I think that's what's unique about them is they can be you could wear one pair to the gym and you can wear another pair after the gym because they are built for both. Like I said, the 5-inch stretch boxer briefs are my personal favorite, but they also have cotton briefs amongst other styles. I think you should try and find a pair that works for you. Be more comfortable. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com and Skims stores and let them know we sent you. After you place your order, you can select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you are looking for the perfect gift this season, the Skims holiday shop is now open at skims.com. Today's show is also brought to you by Storyworth Memoirs, and we're excited to have Storyworth back as a holiday season gift option for your parents or your loved ones. I think if you're around my age, this is a great gift to give to your parents. The idea behind Storyworth is uncovering stories you didn't know about your loved one. This is how it works. Each week, Storyworth emails a loved one a memory-provoking question that you get to choose. What were your favorite toys as a child? What's something you're most proud of? And all your loved one needs to do is respond to that email with a story. After a year, Storyworth compiles your loved one's stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book. Photos are printed in color in the book, and it will be a treasure your loved one and you will be able to share and revisit for generations. Customers love Storyworth. They've printed over 1 million books and have preserved 35 million family stories since their founding 13 years ago. They also have 48,000 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. I use Storyworth, and I think you should too. Give your loved ones a unique keepsake you'll all cherish for years. Storyworth Memoirs. Right now, save $10 or more during their holiday sale when you go to storyworth.com/DaneMoore. That's storyworth.com/DaneMoore to save $10 or more on your order. To stay on Julius, I just want to point out how good he's been in games that Anthony Edwards hasn't played this season. There was 4 games that Ant missed completely at the beginning of the season, but 5 if you include the game where he played like 3 minutes and hurt his hamstring. So that's included in here. But I'm just going to read these stat lines. It's consistently been really productive Julius Randle games, every game that Anthony Edwards hasn't been out there. Here's the 7. First one, 31, 4, and 6. That was the game that Ant hurt the hamstring. Then the next game without Ant, 24, 7, and 3. The next game, 33, 5, and 6. The next game, 37 and 4. The next game, 19, 11, and 10. So he didn't score 20, but he had a triple-double. And then Ant comes back, and now we have these 2 games without Ant, and Julius is 27, 9, and 6. Against the Warriors. And then last night is 24, 10, and 3. And at doing all of that, added offense, added usage, while not losing any sort of shooting efficiency. If you combine those 7 games, Julius is shooting 60% from 2, which is a really powerful number from there, and 36% from 3 in that time. I guess I should have looked up exactly what the record is in those 7 games. But I think maybe 5 and 2. And that just has made a big difference this season in the standings this year, right? Of that they've been without Ant for 7 games and are still able to be sitting here 25 games in at 16 and 9. Julius Randle deserves a ton of credit for that.
Yeah, I would say, like, because people listening, so I'll say it. The 5 wins were the Pacers, the Hornets, the Nets, the Kings, and then the Warriors is their best win of those. So, and like those are all teams where you go, they don't really have anybody for Julius. Sure. So like, should throw that in, but like still, you become the focal point of the defense, and he has been just very consistent in those games and with those performances. And I think also like that does seem to be the times when he is a little bit better. Like I know we've talked about he's not consistent enough pushing the ball. I feel like these are the games where he's more intentional about it. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just recognizing the people around him. Yeah, he's getting the ball. There's no Ant does come back for the ball more. So you feel like that's more your responsibility in those times when he's not out there. And then he probably looks around and goes, okay, now these lineups are especially built to succeed in transition. So let's be intentional about it. I think he's been really good and like really taken the onus of like, all right, these are kind of like my lineups out here of like, it's on me to generate good offense here. And a lot of times, and finding the balance of between his own production and creating for others. And I think that picture becomes very clear when you're like the guy out there, where I think when you're kind of the secondary, it's a little bit more of like, okay, well now I'm getting at this possession. Does this mean it's kind of like a me time?
Sure.
I think
that's got to be naturally confusing, right? Like I feel like I get that from Randle, given that he is an isolation player too. And when when you're number one in the pecking order as an isolation player, I feel like that files in a little bit cleaner, right? Than when you are the number two guy, but your best thing still is to be an isolation creator like Julius is, when the number one guy is one of the highest volume isolation creators in the league. So I get it. The numbers certainly indicate that you're getting different versions of Julius based on Ant's presence or not. I don't say that to be an indictment. I more so say it of like as we're talking about things over these final 55 games or whatever, of can that iron out a little bit more? So it isn't like, okay, Ant isn't in this game, so we're getting this version of Julius. Can they find ways to get that version of Julius alongside the Ant, 40-point games where he's making 6 threes or whatever? I think that is very much tied. The answer to that question being yes is very much tied to this team's ceiling overall this season. How do they do that? And is it just everything that we were talking about in the first 20 minutes of just incorporating more of that pace, playing more of an egalitarian style? Are there like specific things you're seeing when Ant and Julius are both out there that is limiting to one or both of them?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely play slow. There's no question about that. Like it's very much like a walk it up and play more isolation and even the thing about it then too is both of those guys have to be better off the ball. I think. I don't think either one's been awesome off the ball. And so I remember the Phoenix game. They started the game trying to play like a bunch of action movement based offense, and Ant didn't have the ball a ton in those first few minutes. He was kind of off the ball. But the thing about him off the ball and Julius can do the same thing is there's not a lot of movement from them. So they become a very easy cog to cover in that because they're not relocating, cutting, any of those types of things. So a lot of the actions you're doing have ceilings on them because they aren't good. They need to both be better at playing off the basketball because they're both inherently going to do it more when the other guy's out there. So I think that on top of pace is now everything's going to function and flow better. And when there's just general movement on and off the ball is more likely to pop around because the defense is shifting more, not just because of what's happening, in the action, but elsewhere. I think that those are strides those guys have to make. But the whole problem with all of it is those are things that they've never really done or been asked to do, or maybe been asked to do this season and it hasn't happened yet. So those are pretty big strides, and those are things you have to be very intentional about doing and learning and making habit. So I think they're probably not very far along in that process, but I think that's the way to best make it work to where if they want to play this brand of basketball with both of them out there, they have to achieve it.
Yeah, I think it's situational awareness, and I think the Phoenix game is a good example about that. Of like you said, it wasn't a lot of Ant early, and if you go to how they were matched up how Phoenix matched up in that game, they put Dylan Brooks on Randle, and they put Grayson Allen on Ant. That indicates situationally that the better thing to attack here is through Ant. The better defender is on Julius Randle here. That needs to be a situationally aware, let's start by going at this, then making them adjust. But I think an issue that they run into, and this isn't totally wrong, is they both in their head are going, I can kill that matchup and I can kill this matchup too, which is, again, isn't wrong. That's right. I think Julius is just strong and elite in what he does and can probably go at and play through and have an effective night if you play through him, even if he's being guarded by Dylan Brooks. But the better option in that situation at the start of that game was to play through Ant and attack at Grayson Allen, I think. But those are the things that kind of get lost in general with this team of here's a good option, but here's a better option, and I think I don't know what that is. And maybe it's not realistic because both of them are just doesn't matter who you can put on me. I'm going to start playing through mine. But, you know what I'm saying? I think there's better ways to be more intentional in that capacity when they're both out there.
Yeah. So I think, and I didn't talk to anybody about this. I have no idea. When I was watching it in my head at the beginning of that Phoenix game was I think they were let's try to get movement flowing here. Let's put Ant off the ball run different actions with a few different guys, get different touches for guys, get them all into the rhythm of the game. And then Phoenix comes out the way they're matched up and you go, oh, okay. But I think they kind of had it predetermined, pre-scripted in their head of here's how we're going to attack the first start of the game. And then, when you go, oh, Ant's got Grayson Allen, it should be like the Ant show right now. But they'd already determined, I think, of we're going to run Dante and Julius in this action. We're going to run, Jaden in this action. And then it's like you're trying to get everybody involved that way. And so it looks like, hey, why aren't you taking advantage of your most advantageous matchup here? Just when I watched it, I was like, I think this is what they're trying to do here. And because I think it is like, it's just not natural enough for them all to be like, come down the court and be like, oh yeah, we got this. This is at this possession. Oh, okay. Like we got this, like, and just play naturally off of it. So I think they are kind of like, well, we kind of have to, as a coaching staff or whatever, we have to get the wheels turning in terms of movement and everybody touching the ball and getting in a rhythm, and then they can take it from there. So that was kind of how I read it. But I think part of the challenge is that that doesn't occur naturally for this team. So that's why you can't always be like, oh yeah, just do what the game tells and the defense tells you to do when you come down the court. I don't think those answers always pop up in their head automatically.
We're getting even more distant in our minds as to like how long ago it was, but I pulled it up and I'm just looking at my notes, and I wrote down rough Rudy game early, bad hands, is how that game started against Phoenix. And now I am remembering some of that. Okay. So that makes sense. Like they're playing drop, or they're running pick and roll, and which would be through Ant, even though Grayson Allen's on there, and they're trying to find Rudy on the lob and the roll, right? And that's not the wrong way to have done that. Rudy just wasn't helping them in that game in that way. I don't know. When I watch the rest of the league, I see more pointed attacks, I feel like, of kind of more like playoffy, right? Of what are we going at here? How are they matching up? What are the coverages? What should we pick at over and over again here? And to your point, I think what the Wolves are focused on, given the rough starts to games and the lack of energy that kind of has been there at the beginning of games, I think you're right that the initial thing is like, whatever, let's just move it. We got enough guys who can score, which is right. If it's Jaden who has 6 points at the beginning of the game, okay, cool. I think Finch and the coaching staff is just like, whatever. Let's just start this game so we have 12 points in the first 6 minutes and not have it be one of those nights where it's just a slog at the beginning there. I do think all those things, like those are answers though. That's my point. Is like there are buttons here. That's going to get better. Like they could be more intentional over time. And I say that'd be like, I do think this Randle Ant thing, like most things in basketball, is going to get like better with time. I do think when you talk about the high ceiling and playing against some of the best teams in the West, like that has to happen, and it probably has to get a lot better than it is right now, even if I understand why it's as slow as it is. Yeah, they scored 23 points in the first quarter against Phoenix. So yeah,
and I agree with you, and that does become a little bit even more complicated when you're playing alongside Rudy, and like two isolation players and Rudy is a little bit sometimes of like, how is this going to work? And then you do see like, well, can you have a good offense with Rudy? And it's like, you watch the Warriors game, and certainly part of the equation there is that the Warriors don't have like a physical center. Like Quentin Post is a good shot blocker, but a lot of it is like, it's different being a good shot blocker and then going up against somebody who's bigger than you and more physical than you. Like that's a different game versus off-ball shot blocking. So that matters too. But like you see the way where if you can establish more like ball movement, random flow, now Rudy's getting loose easier too, like for easy opportunities, because he's just getting lost because the defense is getting shifted. And then, somebody has to come over and help off like a Jaden weak side drive or whatever. And now it's Rudy's literally by himself by the rim. And then you're just picking what's the best way to give it to him, to where so often of these like Ant Julius things, like we talk about matchups and whatnot, is then it does sometimes get a little bit too like your turn, my turn, even if it's, and now the defense isn't shifted at all, and anything to Rudy's a little bit tougher for both the delivery and his finish. So I agree with you that they can do it. They can get better at it. It's just, I'm interested to watch their path to doing so, because frankly, like each opponent does provide different challenges or not too. So you can think you have it one night, and then the next night you're like, nope, we're not close on this. So yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. But it also just seems like a different brand of basketball sometimes than what they've played the last couple of games, which is interesting. And if melding the two, there's a way to do it. Teams do it. They have to find answers for it.
Today's show is brought to you by Factor, and when winter comes around in our household, we start doing Factor because with a busier routine in the fall and winter, I'm going to games a lot of nights. Finding time to cook can be really tough, and that's why I love Factor. Their chef-prepped, dietitian-approved meals make it easy to stay on track and enjoy something comforting and delicious no matter how hectic the season gets. Factor also has more variety in their meals than they ever have before. You can choose from a wider selection of weekly meal options, including premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp at no extra cost. For more choices to better nutrition, that's why 97% of customers say that Factor helped them live a healthier life. And you can feel the difference no matter your routine. I really do use this, and I think you should too. Eat smart at factormeals.com/DaneMoore50 off and use code DaneMoore50 off to get 50% off your first box. Plus, you will receive free breakfast for 1 year. That's code DaneMoore50 off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box, plus free breakfast for 1 year. You can find that URL code in the show notes. Get delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered with Factor. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. And Rudy's a complicating factor in that, right? Because sometimes he's helpful to the offense and sometimes he isn't. I mean, I'm not setting up my next segment, which I want to talk about how good I think Rudy has been offensively here by highlighting the Phoenix game where it did not start well for him. But I really do think that this has been the most consistently impactful Rudy has been on offense thus far this in his Minnesota time. It's his highest offensive rebounding rate of his career since the 2016-17 season. It's highest assist rate of his career since the 2018-19 season. And it's also just his best field goal percentage season of his career thus far this season. And honestly, if those weren't even the numbers, if the numbers didn't confirm what I was seeing on the floor, I would still be very encouraged by the growth in Rudy's offensive game, because him being a resource on offense in the playoffs is what his game has always needed more of, right? And by being a better passer when they leave him open, and by being a better offensive rebounder, it gives him ways to be an offensive resource consistently in the regular season, but also, more so in the playoffs as well. And I just think that's an important piece to this whole story for this team, because if Rudy can't be that, then he can't be as helpful to you in the playoffs. And what I'm seeing from Rudy is a player this season on offense that I would believe in more to help in the playoffs than I would have any of the previous 3 seasons. I asked Finch about that after the game last night. I'll play that clip.
It seems like he's a much better passer than he was when he came here, and much more also consistent offensive rebounder or going.
Yeah.
What do you think that's been like for him to? I don't know if that's called developing those skills. How have you seen that grow over the years?
Yeah, it's been. We told Rudy when he got here we were gonna treat him like any other basketball player. We were gonna have a special set of rules around him, when and where we were gonna throw him the ball, and I just believe, particularly when you get to the playoffs, you gotta be ready to play through whomever they're gonna allow you to play through. And this year in particular, we've challenged Rudy to be better, even better in the pocket. We've trusted his abilities in the pocket, but he also has to get better at making the right decisions. And I think this year he's done an outstanding job of that. So trusting him to catch it and make the right play, but and just throwing it to him, because that's what the defense is forcing us to do, and then making the defense pay. So kind of chicken and egg, but it's really been good. And his activity on the glass has been really, really outstanding for a while now.
Do you feel like you can picture Rudy being more impactful in the playoff? This version of Rudy being more impactful in the playoffs than previous versions?
Yeah, I think part of it, I think the offensive glass stuff, we've seen that in spurts. I think it's been really, really good this year. I mean, it was also really good the back half of last year. I think always the challenge in the playoffs is that teams are allowed to be more physical on the glass. So like his physical advantages, I think, are a little bit mitigated because you can box him out any way you can or want to in the playoffs. So like you really have to fight through that. So I think that's something that
Looney.
Yeah,
Looney.
Yeah, I mean, just whatever way you want, like, push, shove, whatever, grab, hold, like there's more of that. And it's more frequently called in the regular season than it is in the playoffs. So you really have to that'll be a challenge for him, his mentality, his approach when the time comes is to okay, I know this is the best version of myself. I've got to find a way to produce and not get rattled by probably what I feel is fouls and whatnot as I'm getting boxed out. So I think that's a big thing. And then just it's just not getting sped up on the short roll stuff, which I'm sure teams will have different approaches for that too. But yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing more progress in the regular season, which would suggest that there will be more positives, more instances where you're like, that was pretty good in the playoffs too, because, this is all training basically for the playoffs. And I think he's doing that, and it's been a slow progression, but it definitely has been a progression. And I've noticed that it was, I think, a good thing on your part to notice that it has been a lot better. And he's gotten a lot better with his decision making. He's less apt to be like, I might have a look here if I take 2 dribbles into no man's land and throw it off the rim or whatever. Just get too sped up on the pass, make the pass that isn't even there. I think he's done a really good job of diagnosing. Okay, slow yourself down. Where's the pass here? Sometimes just making the very easy play, and letting the offense continue to roll from there, that kind of stuff. It's gotten a lot better, and it can be that simple, and it should be that simple, frankly, when he's in there, because if it gets more complicated, that's when you get in trouble. So I think they'll have more possessions where they can make teams pay for what they're doing, and it only takes a few sometimes for things to loosen up.
Right, to make them change. Yeah.
Right.
I think to how Finch put it, to treat him like a basketball player, what they were going to have to do, the one thing you're going to have to do was when you catch the ball at 8 feet from the hoop and you cannot just dunk it, you need to be able to do something in that range to be a threat to score or a threat to pass and then score. For you're wide open 8 feet from the basket. How do we turn this into points? And if you remember early on in his career here in Minnesota, it was the duck in for the post up, right? And then when that would happen, maybe he's got a small guy on him and he's ducked in for the post up, but when that string played out and it was not efficient offense, he was not able to turn those catches off of the roll, duck in on the guy, post up, seal, and score consistently. And so that one kind of got thrown out. I think the most normal thing or frequent around the league of fives like that in that space is, we call that, that Isaiah Hartenstein push shot, right? And that little push shot from floater range is the big, as there's 2 on the ball up top, the low man's rotated over and you're wide open at 8 feet, take a little push shot. Rudy was not able to develop that and be able to hit that with any consistency. I think we saw that over the weekend too. And he just doesn't have the fluidity of his body motion to be able to be moving at the rim while taking that shot. He has to have both of his feet planted to be able to take the push shot, and it just makes it unnatural. It makes it funky. He doesn't hit it at a high clip. Then I think we got to the Euro step sort of finish things, and which was his most fluid activity I think we saw of the 3 of them doing it, but it would often then he would need to finish with finesse, right? Those are your Euro into off the basket. And again, he's deficient in touch as a player. And those just are not going to be, they're not dunks. So I think we're seeing right now in that spot, even just over the last couple of weeks, is a step with intention to then go dunk, and if you watch the games over the weekend, the Warriors game for sure was that. But if he's needing to put it down on the deck and take that risk of you're 7-2 and you dribbled here, or you're stepping through into it, if you get there, you're dunking it. So it's 100% chance that if you avoided the turnover with the dribble, we get to the bucket, dunk. That's different than the Euro because the Euro doesn't have the 100% finish at the end there. And so, I don't know. It's all like, I'm certain there's 1,000 people right now rolling their eyes at like this stuff of like, he can't make an 8-foot push shot. He can't post up and score efficiently against a 6'5" guy, can't Euro and lay it in. Like, yeah, he can't. He can't. Yet look at all the numbers and what happens when Rudy's on the floor and the impact of Rudy being on the floor. What we're looking for is half measures here right now of just something that is basic, but he can do consistently. And I think it hasn't been a lot of games, but I feel like I'm seeing more of that. And I'm certainly amongst the whole time, this is the best he's been as a short roll passer. He had like one zip to the corner and last night, and I was like, that's just good. Like that isn't like good by the Rudy standards. Quick turn, pivot, zip to the corner for whoever, took the three there. Like what he's doing in that 8-foot range has been a huge problem for the Wolves in his 4 years here. And to me, it's the best that it's ever been, kind of by far. So I just wanted to make sure that we hit on that.
I think you're right. I mean, it's got to be like you mentioned, that hard step and dunk. Like he has to have a scoring move because if you don't have a scoring move, then like people are going to kind of deke at you to make you want to pass it, and you're just going to be baited into these passes. And now all of a sudden they're actually in the corner. They just took a step to make you think they weren't, and so there is no like right play. Like if you are not a scoring threat and they know you're not a scoring threat, then you're just going to turn the ball over because you're going to get baited into it. So he needs to establish himself as like a real threat to do something with the ball, to get toward the rim. And now like people are like, oh, I have to step in here actually. And now those passes become 10 times easier and more obvious, and to where you can make them with full confidence and conviction. So yeah, I think the two things you just mentioned, they kind of play into each other.
Yeah. Good for Rudy there. And he had to leave last night's game. We were just told it was for personal reasons. I think connecting some dots, might be baby number 2 for him and his family. So he didn't really play in the second half last night, but I would assume that he is back in the Wolves rotation here soon.
If that's what it is, didn't Ant miss the second half of the Kings game at Target Center for his?
It was Kings.
Yeah, it was Kings. It was Kings. Yeah, yep.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, it was weird. I don't know. I just didn't have it on my radar, and I was like, he subbed out like 3 minutes into the third quarter. I'm like, and he was like kind of playing well. And sometimes Rudy gets that like quick hook, like and Finch will just be like, Nas in there, And so I kind of thought it was that at first, and then we got the personal reasons update there. So, congratulations to Rudy if that is in fact what's going on. That's not the kind of stuff that I try to. It's personal reasons. I'll leave it at that. The last thing I did want to talk to you about, and this is not something we're going to be able to do with every single time the Wolves are named as a suitor for a player in trade rumors or reporting. There's just going to be too many of those, clearly, for those that are paying attention. Every time there's a name, like it's going to be comma and the Wolves checked in here. And that's where the Wolves are at as being a contender and knowing they have an imperfect roster and kicking the tires, as they say, on every single one of these players. I do want to talk about Coby White because I think it's an interesting proposition as like a style of player to add to this team. I like Coby White as a player. Like I have, watching Bulls games, over the last 4 or 5 years, he's always been a player I've kind of liked. So it was funny to see that name come up and be like, my instant reaction being like, ooh, but I don't know about on this team though. Just because what Coby White is as a player is pretty much an all offense, no defense type of player. So, I mean, you can mention Coby White specific things, but what I wanted to talk with you about is just like this general idea for the Wolves and at the deadline of adding a point guard, combo guard type of player to this group in a trade that is a player who might give you a lot on offense, but is like very clearly going to hurt your team defensively. That's kind of been like a move that the Wolves have been doing with the Rob Dillingham, draft selection, losing a couple of defensive personnel players and Kyle Anderson and Nickeil Alexander-Walker over the last few years. What was just your sort of initial thought when you saw that Coby White name come up, and what do you think about adding that skill set of a guy who's going to help the offense but hurt the defense?
Yeah, it is an interesting thing where it's like this team's offense has actually been pretty good this year. And I know you can point to specific matchups where it's struggled, but like that's not where any like deficiencies are really, if you're being honest. And then they need to find a way to like recapture things defensively in my mind. And Coby is, I mean, it is like you mentioned, it's drastic. Like he is a defensive zero. And offensively, like, yeah, he can shoot, he can create. So I get all that. People think they need more of that alongside Ant, but like, you're sacrificing a lot in my mind with Coby if you're doing that. I think in the playoffs he'd get picked on. So I think if you did something like that, you would have to go to Ant to be like, you need to play more defense like you did 2 years ago. Yeah. Because this version of Ant defensively has not been very good this year, and it would not fit. You would have a really poor defensive backcourt. Of like Coby getting picked on ball, Ant like off ball has been a real struggle. So I think it would be.
And then if you're going to take Rudy off the floor in the playoffs, some too, which related to the previous thing, but like
ball contain is everything at that point, and Coby White can't do it. So I don't think he'd be able to be out there in like Rudy-less lineups, like, I mean, or he would have to have a major mentality shift in his mind, physicality shift. Coby has very well fit into the Bulls, and I like watching the Bulls. They're a fun watch. They're very average to maybe just sub-average, like playing team scores a lot, can't stop a nosebleed. Like Kobe's played pretty well into that identity. So I like watching him too. I don't see Coby as somebody who's like, other than like a 6-man scorer, somebody who's going to be on like a championship contending team. So yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah. So Dane just pulled up the estimated plus minuses in his defense. Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of numbers in the single digits for year over year. Now it's 22nd this year. So, massive improvement, but
7 games.
Yeah. Right. But that's just it. He's a bottom 10% version. Defender. Per these defensive estimated plus minuses, bottom 10% in the league in terms of his defensive impact every year. These are insanely low numbers, while being like a top 25, just averaging those out, top 15% offensive player. But again, like this team's offense is playing well as is. They score a lot of points, they hit a lot of shots, they hit a lot of outside shots on a night-to-night basis. So I know everybody just like wants like a point guard, like because you want to like have the 2K lineup that looks good. And I understand thinking of like what makes Ant's life even easier, or easier in general. And you can come up with that, but I don't think that is addressing the deficiencies that separates them right now from the top teams. And isn't that the goal of any trade right now, is to make up some of that gap and put yourself more in that echelon? I don't see how Coby White would do that, but we'll see what they do.
It's a bummer of how the roster complexion has changed. Like Coby White on that team two years ago.
Yeah.
Sick.
But then again, playing over who is always kind of
I know.
Of like, like, okay, so who is not playing because of that?
Yeah. It was so the Wolves played the Warriors on Friday, and I try to watch the team's previous game that the Wolves are playing. I try to watch their last game, and they played the Bulls. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like get to watch some Coby White here as well. And I'm obviously focused on the defensive side of the floor, because when I'm normally watching the Bulls fight, I'm watching it more casually, and I'm not like hyper focused on what guys are doing defensively, right? And what it all reminded me of is, to put it in a Wolves context, like D'Angelo Russell, and both sides of it. Like when D'Lo was that 1 year where he was really good here offensively, and he would have had similar numbers, right? Top 10 percentile in offense, bottom 10 percentile on defense. That's like the archetype of player that Coby White is. But watching him defensively, he's used on that Bulls team the same way that D'Angelo was used on this Wolves team under Finch 4 years ago. And it's the off-ball role, guarding the guy in the corner, and you're the communicator. And D'Lo is actually a really good communicator, right? We're going here, we're doing this, low man rotation, calling out whatever the coverage is that you're in. And I'm watching the first quarter of the game, and I was like, oh, Kobe's doing that stuff. And it's like, and that stuff isn't nothing, like sometimes players are too short, too physically deficient, that the best thing they can do for you defensively is be mentally engaged and be a communicator. And I think that's what I think Coby does that. He does just stop moving at times. He gets frozen on 2 feet. He dies on some screens. It's really like, I think most people listening can picture what that D'Angelo Russell experience looked like. And that was the first thing that I put down when I was watching that game is I think if the Wolves traded for Coby White, they would be getting a really good offensive player. But the way to envision it is you would be getting what D'Angelo Russell was defensively to this team. And given the Wolves defensive personnel, and I'm with you that they need to recapture more of that defensive identity, I just don't know in a vacuum that that move of trading for him somehow would necessarily fit the needs of this team, as currently constructed.
I mean, isn't it kind of a little bit like, if you're going to do that, you would at least want to see how Bones plays for a while in the rotation of like, like this is obviously like the free version of it. And Coby White at this point in his career is a better player than Bones Highland, but like, just see how much the difference is. Like maybe how much Bones can be better defensively on that end of the court, and like how much lesser is the offense. And certainly like there will be a gap. I'm sure there will be, but what is the difference versus the cost? Because right now Bones is free basically. And how much is upgrading that going to elevate your team? Because if it's not, like I said, if it's not helping you close the gap on the Rockets, the Warriors, the Nuggets, the Spurs, maybe even, like, then what's the point? That's kind of where I'm at. And yeah, I guess I'd have to see it, and maybe they'd be right about it. But so much of it always is like, just need another creator next to Ant. It's like, okay, but at what cost is a pretty big thing in my mind. Not only in terms of acquisition, but also what you're giving up on the other end. And if it's too high, then you wouldn't pull the trigger on that. And we'll see what like a market for Coby White is. Maybe it's
what was thrown out in that article. Joe Cowley reported this, for the Chicago Bulls, and we know Joe a little bit, and he's plugged in there. And the package that he threw out, just to, I don't know if he just used it as an example, but I think it fits as an example in this. It was Dante DiVincenzo, Terrence Shannon Jr., and then maybe like a second or two for Coby White. And I think that's just, Dante isn't an elite defender by any means, right? He struggles from some of that, just physically being smaller than guys too. But if that were the deal going out, right, and you lose Dante DiVincenzo from part of your defensive identity and if we call him a mediocre defender, to replace him with a bottom 10 defender, like that's just, it's not just adding Coby White, it's removing Dante DiVincenzo as well. And I don't know, pretty much any package that you could put together in that sort of way with a real piece going out, which I think would be required to get Coby White. It's just it would kind of be a double whammy, right? Of how it would impact your defense, which sucks. I like Coby White. Like I like Coby White as a player, and I wish I was more encouraged by the proposition of what he might look like on this team too. I think he's interesting though in one other way too, the money situation.
That's
Coby White. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, his contract expires after this year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dante has another year left at that same price, which has value in itself. And Dante, as we said, is the team's highest net rating player. And it's a pretty significant margin, even over the other starters, so like, yeah, that's where I would be at on that. You're going to maybe have to give Coby White a raise like next year. And Dante is there for another year on that helpful number. For a guy who you're playing your best basketball when he's on the court. Like, I know like it's almost like the things Dante, good games are loud, bad games are loud. So I get it, like kind of be a little polarized in that way, but the numbers are the numbers, and that like driving a lot of success for your team and making a change and hoping it's just going to get better. I think would be a pretty risky move. I don't know.
I think it's interesting from the salary thing of, it's like, oh, and you would need to pay Coby White. And that was totally my initial reaction of like, okay, so then if you traded for him, you need to pay him. You'd probably get a Naz Reid contract, right? 25 to 30.
Yeah, maybe.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I texted somebody and they're like, I have no idea how this market's going to work. Probably over 25 million a year. But I've done plenty of those texts over the course of time that we were both talking to people about Nickeil Alexander-Walker Summer. No way he'll get more than 8 million. And I was like, I'm pretty sure he's going to get more than, so whatever. I'm not saying that that's a fact of what it is. But if Coby is getting 25 to 30 million on his next deal, your initial thing is like, ooh, that's a lot more money. I am kind of intrigued by the idea of the Wolves finding a way to add another $30 million player to their team, period. Like, again, rule Coby White out of this, right? Just another guy that's like a for sure starter as a $25 to $30 million player would be, right? And their only way, given their salary cap situation of getting there is to get a guy who's making on a 12 million. Yeah. And then, but is actually worth more. So I have like I just wanted to throw that out there. Like, that's a little bit intriguing to me in general. But
then you also have to say, what's Dante's market? Like, what would Dante make? I don't know. Maybe not that. Probably not that. Maybe, and not like 30. I don't. But I don't. 12. I don't. You already have that in some way, shape, or form of probably 20. I would think 20. Like,
right. And you would need to make other moves again, even if whoever we think is our dream $30 million a year player, like there's going to be ramifications to that. But I don't know. It's very important to have, like, if you could have $30 million players on your team versus 3, like, and they're all worth that, that's almost always a good thing to have. So I would factor that in to this, but really the defensive part kind of throws it off for me. This is also just a side note as I'm starting to turn my brain on to a little bit of trade stuff. This isn't related to Coby White, but I wonder about Jalen Clark as a trade asset for people to trade for, in part because I was thinking about this whole free agency. You're going to get a raise. That could be problematic for, with Coby White, for where the Wolves are with the second apron. They need to make a subsequent move. I don't know how much Jalen Clark is going to get next season. Andy's a restricted free agent, so it's going to be like depressed, right? Maybe like 6-7 million. I don't know. Would be like what my guess would be on that next deal. And given where the Wolves are at, and given how many players that they do have that they're trying to play here, I wonder if there's an opportunity cost there. You know what I'm saying? Of like, well, what if we use Jalen in a trade to capitalize on some value of the player that he is, because we know we're going to be so up against the second apron next season that even giving him a $5 million raise off of his minimum contract right now, it would have that impact. And I say that as like somebody who likes Jalen Clark as a basketball player and thinks he would absolutely be worth it. But sometimes you do. I don't know. This would be like a smaller version of the Nickeil thing. What do you think about that?
No, because after like Nickeil, I just assume that teams don't know who Jalen Clark is, don't actually think he has any value, and so that's just where I'm at. I used to be like, oh yeah, like Nickeil, like after he was awesome for the Wolves in that Nuggets series, I was like, people are gonna want this guy. Like, do you see how he just played? And he went for nothing because teams don't. There's just not enough like attention paid to the 8th, 9th, 10th guys in the rotation. There just isn't. So I don't think you'd have hardly any value. I don't think they'd be like, and we got this Jalen Clark guy. I don't think that would be. It'd be like, what is his number? Oh, so that makes the math work. Oh, okay, fine. That's where I'm at with it. I've given up on that a long time ago. Like looking at guys deeper in the rotation and thinking that a team has any idea who that player is, because you think they should with staff sizes and whatnot, but I don't think they do.
Or we are just overhyping him.
That's true too. Everybody overvalues their own players. I get that. Like front offices will say that, and that's true. But that's exactly it. Why? Like I don't think that's a elevator of like an asset thrown into a deal of any way, shape, or form. I don't think from another team's mind.
I think it would be for a smart team, but I take your point. I take your point there. I don't know. It was the first time I'd kind of like sat down and looked at salary stuff.
I see why.
Doing Coby White. Yeah. I thought it was worth bringing up.
I can't wait if Jalen gets into restricted free agency to see what it is. I bet we'll be like, he'll make this much. I'm like, no, it's 3.
All right. That's true. That's true. And it'll probably depend on like, what does the rest of the season look like? Is he in the rotation the rest of the way? Does he end the season at
in the rotation of a playoff team.
4%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Or when the season's done, are we looking at Jalen's basketball reference page and it says 31.7% from three last year?
He played 4 minutes a game in the playoffs, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. Did want to put that on the radar as like a super small example of the Coby White thing and an even smaller example of or more relevant example of the Nickeil Alexander-Walker thing. But you're probably right for all the reasons you said, and probably above all else, it is restricted free agency. Nickeil Alexander-Walker was not a restricted free agent.
You don't want to give up your restricted free agents. I wouldn't.
No. It's and it doesn't happen often. And, especially for somebody who they've sometimes restricted free agents leave, but they leave and don't go on to another team, or they go sign a two-way elsewhere. Players who are restricted free agents, who are functional pieces for the team, their incumbent team, very often are back. And I would assume that's what happens with Jalen Clark. I also, in my opinion, think Jalen Clark is a player who could play in the rotation in the playoffs for some teams in the NBA. And so I would say that's a smart team. If they in the Wolves making a 3-team trade for whoever pulled back Jalen Clark in that deal, I think that would be a smart team. But you're right. That isn't often what happens. And what I do is often overhype like niche role players like that too. So we'll see what happens there. And I'm sure we'll be talking more about the trade deadline as that comes up. Today is December 15th too, which opens up the tradability of a lot of players around the league. I think it's all players who signed a contract the previous offseason. So it is possible that whether it's the Wolves or somebody else, that something could happen soon. Typically it goes to February, but more often we're seeing around this December 15th deadline, little things beginning to happen. I think that's when Dennis Schroeder was moved for the first time last year. And it's also, if you get traded now, then you could be traded again by the deadline. Some of that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's now officially the season of trade stuff, because now teams can actually start making them. So we're going to try and have some conversations about it. But like I said, every single player name that comes up, we're not gonna do that here on this show. You got anything else?
Easy way to fill daily content though. I have nothing else. Interested to see when Ant comes back and when Mike comes back and how the rotation and everything looks, but that's all wait and see at this point in speculation. So just excited to see how that plays out over this week.
Yeah, I wasn't in Golden State, so I didn't see him hobbling around. I didn't see him last night either. So I think John, I don't want to put word. I think John said maybe that he saw him kind of like favoring the foot, limping around a little bit, but Finch pregame didn't raise any alarm bells and kind of gave it the day-to-day thing. So I'm pretty sure we're all operating under the assumption that it is a day-to-day thing, and Wednesday or Friday or something like that we could see him be back. But appreciate you doing it, man. We'll maybe circle back again next Monday, and I'll see you at the Wolves game on Wednesday night. You guys, as always, can be reading Jace over in the Pioneer Press at twincities.com. You can follow him on Twitter at Jace Frederick. Coming up on the show, I think we're gonna do everybody this week. 5 shows, so we will have Kyle. We'll have Kyle on Tuesday morning to do another episode. We'll keep moving with that. So until I'm joined by Kyle tomorrow, he's Jace. I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah. Hope you dancing.